Hello, and welcome back to the Garden of Grace Devotion. My name is Pastor Katie, and I'm one of the pastors at Trinity Lutheran Church in Lilburn, Georgia. Today in the Garden of Grace Devotion, I want to share a story with you. A story about how I was recently reminded of the goodness of God, of the new mercies of God that greet us every day. And I was given this reminder in a way that I wouldn't have expected. So about five or 6 years ago, I guess it's 6 years ago now, I was given the role of looking after my godparents. They never had children, and so I became the person responsible for them, for their health care, for helping manage their finances, and all the things. It came to a point where both were having memory issues, and I had to sell their home in order to provide for memory care and health care for both of them. It was not an easy thing for me to do because we were selling the property I had to sell the property to a developer. Now their home was a lovely little home. It was a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. I grew up next door, and it was a second home for me in many ways. So the thought of selling it to be torn down was very hard for me. But the property was 1.5 miles from the beach, and it was worth a great deal more than the house. So I had to do what I had to do in order to look after them. The day I sold the house, the day I signed the paperwork and sold the house, I needed to do something life-affirming. So I went to Lowe's and I bought a couple of apple trees. And I came home and I planted them in my front yard. One of them is behind me right now. My godfather loved apples, and he had an apple a day. He would say, "An apple a day keeps the doctor away." He would say that often in his English accent. And so I planted the apple trees to remind me of God's ongoing presence and new life in the midst of hard things. So the apple trees have been in my yard for, as I said, 5 or 6 years now. Last year we had quite a few apples, though they were kind of small, but they're getting there. And then a couple of weeks after my mother-in-law died this past March, so did one of the apple trees. And I thought, oh, you have got to be kidding me. It was not an easy time. And in addition to her passing, now I have a dead apple tree, which was supposed to remind me of new life and goodness in the world and nourishment through apples. And the thing about apple trees is you have to have 2. So when that tree died, I thought, well, guess there won't be any apples this year. That's fantastic. So my husband, during this just hard, sad time for our family, looked out the front door, and here I am dragging off this dead apple tree into the backyard. And he goes, "What are you doing?" And I said, "The tree died. No more apples." So I hauled it off into the backyard. And I thought, blah. No apples this year. So as Mother's Day approached this year, I thought, let us do something to remember Andy's mom. So we planted another apple tree in the yard, and I thought, maybe in years to come, this apple tree that we are planting in her memory will help to pollinate this tree that's been here so much longer, and we will have apples again. This week, we are getting ready to start cleaning out my mother-in-law's home before we need to sell it. and it's not an easy time. And a couple of days ago, I walked by this apple tree, the one left still standing. It's now 5 or 6 years old. And I saw the most wonderful thing. There is one apple on this tree. It's the biggest apple I've seen on this tree in the years it's produced. And there's just one. Somehow, the tree that died must have pollinated this tree before it died. And now, there is an apple where I didn't think there would be. I saw it, and I said, oh my goodness. I called my husband and my children. I was like, come and see, come and see. Come and see a sign of the goodness of God here hanging on this tree in the form of an apple. Where I thought there would not be any gifts this year, there is one. A symbol of hope. A single apple growing from this tree behind me. And so I wonder what it looks like to continue to look for the symbols of hope, to look for the apples where we didn't think we'd see them, to look for new life and growth during challenging times where we think it may not be, to be reminded of the goodness of God, where morning by morning, new mercies we see. That line is from one of my grandmother's favorite hymns, Great is Thy Faithfulness. And it's based on Lamentations chapter 3, verses 22 to 24. It reads, "The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness, O God. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore, I will hope in him." Together, let us look for the symbols of hope, the new mercies that God brings to us every morning. Let us give thanks to God that great is God's faithfulness. I would love to hear from you about the symbols of hope, the symbols of God's mercy that you see in the world around you. Feel free to comment in the chat box or send me an email. Thanks be to God for the apple on the tree. Thanks be to the God who is with us always. And I pray God's peace for you today. Amen.